So hello and welcome to the continued coverage of the walkthrough series, and in this episode we are looking at the 9618 variant 4.2 Python implementation to question 2 of the same paper. So let's just go ahead and scroll all the way down to number 2. Okay, so a program stores data in a 1D array of records. The array is called hash table. The array is spaced for 200 records. Each data item is stored in a specific index of the array that is calculated using an algorithm. The index is calculated from the key field using the formula key mod 2. If two key fields generate the same index, there is a collision. Any records that have a collision are stored in a second array called spare. This array is spaced for 100 records. When a collision is detected, the record is stored in the next free space in spare. Then for part A, we are required to write program code to declare the record type called new record, right? And we are given the pseudocode for the new record as it were. Then they say if your chosen programming language does not support record formats, a class can be used instead. So as it happens, Python doesn't have a built-in record data type. There are code structures in C, and I think in C++ as well. But you don't have such, so we are going to make use of a class as it were. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the implementation here. So maybe just to point out a few things, you see that we have 3 fields inside of the record, and they are all of type integer. So let's switch to the code right here. So you see that we have the implementation right there on lines 3 to line 80, line 8 as it were. Then the thing that I want you to take note of is that we have a constructor going on in there, is it? So the constructor is basically setting, it's going to be called whenever we create a new record, because remember the constructor is going to be called whenever you instantiate an object of a new class. So since we new record is a class, right? It automatically needs a constructor, and we have the constructor definition right there on lines 5 through 8. And of course, inside of the constructor parameters, that's where we have the values key item and key item 1 and key item 2. Then write program code. Moving on to number 2, rather B item 1, write program code to declare the global arrays, hash table, and spare. Then coming back to the code, you see that this was the class declaration for the record, right? Then on line 10, we've gone back to the main file, and we're declaring a new hash table of a new record, right? And basically the notation that I did here on line 11 was to use a loop to create a private variable inside of the hash table array, right? It's essentially going to be in the range of 200, is it? So basically this just creates 200 objects of type record, of type new record. Then we are doing the same thing for spare, right there on lines 11 and lines 12, by using the range function, or the for loop with the range function. Then of course you can copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Next up we have B item 2, which requires us to initialize rather you have a procedure called initialize, right? And it's going to store an empty record in each element in the hash table in spare. So let's go ahead and look at that. So lines 15 to lines 19, that's where we have the function definition for initialize. And we're using a for in range, the for loop with the range function. So we are saying that for I, that is the current element in the range of the length of the hash table, we're just going to initialize it to a new record. And if you come back to the constructor definition here, you see that whenever we instantiate a new record, it's going to be assigned a value of -1 for the key, a value of -1 for the item, a value of -1 for the for item 2 as it were. So that's what we are essentially doing here on line 17 there, and we're also doing the same thing for the spare array as it were, or list as it were, because they are called list in Python. Then you can copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Next up, we look at part C, which requires us to create a function called calculate hash And basically we need to use the formula key mod 200, is it? So it's going to take a key field as a parameter, then calculates and returns the hash value for the key field. So basically we take a key as a parameter, then pass it to key calculate hash and return key mod 200. So let's go ahead and look at that. So that's what I have on lines 22 to lines 23 here. So we take a key, then return the modulus of that key with 200, right? So that's why you see it only has 2 marks. There's really not much going on with this one. Also here as well, even the questions that we've covered so far, you see that there's really not much going on. Then with part D, that's when the stakes are raised a little bit higher, because now we are looking at 6 marks. So we have to do these things so that we can take all the 6 marks. So we want to create a function called insert into hash. It takes a record of type new record as a parameter. It uses calculate hash to calculate the hash value for the key field in the record. It checks to see if the hash value index in hash table currently stores an empty record. If the index stores an empty record, store the parameter in the next index. Otherwise, rather not otherwise, but if the index does not store an empty record, store the parameter in spare. So let's go ahead and look at the implementation that satisfies these requirements here. So my insert into hash function is right here, spanning from lines 25 to lines 34. So the first thing that we need to do is we pass the record as a parameter, right? Then we take that record's key and pass it to calculate hash, and the calculate hash is going to return us the hash value, right? Then we are going to store it inside of the hash value variable right here. Then we use an if statement to check if the hash, if the key is equal to -1, in which case we want to satisfy this first condition right here. So we are going to store it inside of the hash table. The record that was given is an argument. We are going to store it inside of the hash table right here at the specified hash value. Otherwise, we want to satisfy this other condition here, the second if statement there, in which case we are going to check to see if we have space inside of the spare array. If we have space, then we are simply going to take that record and put it in that particular position inside of what? Inside of the spare list, as it were. Then we simply break out of the loop. So for this, you can copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document for 6 marks. Then part E says that the text file hash data.txt stores up to 200 rows of data to be stored into the hash table. Each row contains 3 integer numbers separated by commas. The first number is the key field, the second number is item 1, and the third number is item 2. For instance, this is the first row in the text file. So let's just go ahead and open the text file called hash data. Scroll the way up, you actually see that it matches what we are told in the question paper. So we have the key, the item 1 and item 2, as it were. So what we need to do is we need to create a procedure called create hash table, and it does the following things. It's going to open the text file hash data.txt. It creates a record of for each row of the data in the text file, and it's going to call the insert into hash with the record that has been created. Then for 5 marks, this is what we need to do. So let's go ahead and look at the implementation here. Create hash table. All right, since we are working with files, you see that I did use exception handling right here. Right? So let's just go through the lines here. So function here, the line 37, we start our try block there. We open the file in read mode, and we're going to call it file. Then for each line in the file, we want to strip the current line whenever there's a comma, and store it inside of this parts variable. So what we are simply doing is we take, let's say this is the first line in the file, right? So we're going to take everything here, split it wherever there's a comma using the split function right there. So the split function takes whatever character you want to split your data with. So we want to split whenever there's a comma. So essentially we are going to have 3 parts, right? So parts is actually going to have 3 elements in it. Actually, it's a list. It's going to be a list with 3 parts, or in array in other languages, but in Python it's going to be a list. So if the parts array or parts list has 3 elements, then we are going to take the first element and store it as the key, the second element and store it as the first item, then the third element and store it as the second item. Then we instantiate a new record right here on line 46. Then we insert that record into the hash table, is it? Then we are going to repeat this until we no longer have any elements inside of the file. Then if should we have an error, we are just going to handle the exceptions. Either we do not find the file or we have an error handling the file, as it were. So we have these two except statements taking care of that. And of course, having done that, you'd have completed the solution that satisfies the requirements. So you go ahead and copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Then for part F, item 1, we have to create a procedure called print spare. That's simply going to output the key field of each element in the array spare. So remember what we did in the insert into hash, right? If there's a collision, we are going to store that element inside of the spare, right? So what we want to do now is we want to output all the elements that we have put into spare. So that's what the print spare function does here. So we are simply iterating through the spare element, through the spare list rather, not element. So we are iterating through the spare list and checking to see if the current key is not equal to -1. In which case, if it is not equal to -1, it means we have something in that particular slot or in that particular position. So we simply take the key for that particular slot and output it. So we copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Then the main program should call the procedure to initialize the arrays, call the procedure to create the hash table. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the main program. So we're initializing, then we're creating the hash table. Then call the procedure to output contents of the array spare. Then we are going to call print spare because it's the one that's going to output the elements in spare. So write program code for the main method. So this is the program code for the main method that satisfies those requirements, and we copy the code and paste it inside of the evidence document. Next up, we need to test our program by running it and taking a screenshot of the output. So let me just go ahead and make sure everything is saved. Then click on the play button here, and you actually see that there's the output, is it? So you take a screenshot of the output and paste it inside of the evidence document. And that's just about it for this video. Hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next one.